American Northwest. At the turn of the century, a land of lush forests and untapped potential. In the settling of this frontier, one man was destined to play a key role, founding one of the great companies of the 20th century. His name? Frederick Weyerhaeuser. Frederick was 18 years old when he came to America in the mid-1800s. Working hard and saving his money, he made his way to Rock Island, Illinois, where he was hired as a night watchman at a sawmill. By the age of 25, Frederick and his brother-in-law owned that mill. Intensely honest, driven to succeed, Weyerhaeuser went on to build several more businesses. He and a host of trusting partners became a major force in the Midwest timber and lumber business. In the late 1800s, Frederick began looking toward the Pacific Northwest. The railroad was selling timberland in Washington state. Frederick knew the growing nation would require more lumber. In January 1900, Frederick and 15 partners formed the Weyerhaeuser Timber Company. They purchased 900,000 acres of Washington timberland, the largest private land transaction in America to that time. Of these forests, Frederick reportedly said, "This is not for us, nor for our children, but for our grandchildren."
Weyerhaeuser today is a collection of people and businesses and customers and products. It really is quite diverse.
The company really starts with the land, our timber.
We have 5.4 million acres across the United States.
Some of the prime timber growing region in the whole world.
We are a development company, a home building company, and a land development company.
Sawmills, oriented strand board,
panels and plywood.
Weyerhaeuser is the largest producer of market pulp in the world.
The fine paper business manufactures 1.5 million tons annually.
We have about 100 facilities in our containerboard packaging and recycling business.
Weyerhaeuser Canada includes timberlands operations, pulp mills, paper mills, OSB mills, and a number of sawmills.
Our company is truly a global company. We have 2 box shops in China. We do a great deal of business in Japan. We have timberlands in New Zealand, and then 2 in South America, in Uruguay.
Mostly Weyerhaeuser is about people.
It's engineers, it's technicians, it's operators, it's people that work on the equipment and maintenance.
Foresters, biologists, scientists, and tree planters.
All of them focused together on bringing value to their customers.
In 1900, the fledgling Weyerhaeuser Timber Company was headquartered in Tacoma, Washington, half a continent away from Frederick and his partners. They needed a solid, practical manager and found one in George S. Long. Under Long's careful guidance, the young company concentrated its efforts on acquiring new timberland and selling standing timber to local lumber mills. Locals soon came to realize that this was a company to rely on. Then, just 2 years into the venture, disaster struck. A hot, dry wind fanned some isolated brush fires in southwest Washington. The result was one of the most devastating forest fires in U.S. history. It would be known as the Yacolt Burn. It ravaged the heart of Weyerhaeuser lands in the foothills of Mount St. Helens. The partners faced the loss of more than 20,000 acres of timber. Other landowners advised, let it rot. Instead, Weyerhaeuser Timber Company embarked on an unprecedented salvage effort that took 7 years, launching the company into logging for the first time. That same year, the company bought its first lumber mill in Everett, Washington. The Weyerhaeuser Timber Company was now officially in the lumber business, and it would never look back.
When a log comes into the sawmill, we use 100% of that log.
They'll come across through this laser scanner. It scans the logs for length and diameter, sends that information into the computer. The computer will then decide what the best value is and the most recovery it can get out of that log. And then it'll program the saws and they'll make the appropriate cut.
It is a high-tech, fast-paced moving sawmill.
Mills and lumber set Weyerhaeuser Timber Company firmly on a path to the future. From new headquarters offices in Tacoma, George S. Long began to consider the best long-term plan for those Weyerhaeuser holdings. In this era, standard logging practice was cut it, use it, move on. After all, forest resources seemed limitless. Tax laws encouraged the sale of harvested land to farmers to grow crops and discouraged holding it for growing trees. But Long saw a day when timber itself would be a crop. In 1909, he told national forestry leaders, "Timber is a natural resource that can be renewed. The company's greatest asset is the forest soil and the reproductive power of trees." Long initiated studies of a new concept, sustainable forestry, but his dream would take decades more to be realized. As the 1920s ended, the new Panama Canal dramatically lowered the cost of shipping lumber to the East Coast. Weyerhaeuser gambled that if East Coast builders tried Douglas fir, they would appreciate its superior quality. The gamble paid off. In 1928, the new Weyerhaeuser marketing plan revolutionized the way lumber was sold. 4 Square lumber. Building on the company's reputation for square dealing, Weyerhaeuser offered customers standard sizes cut square on the ends, carefully graded, and packaged to highlight its quality. The 4 Square campaign was a bold, successful move. It made the Weyerhaeuser brand, like its namesake, stand for quality and reliability. And it made customers think of wood products in entirely new ways.
Products that come from trees are just tremendously mind-boggling in the diversity. There's the things we commonly think about.
Lumber.
Pencils.
Paper.
There are also things that we don't normally think about, like ingredients in toothpaste.
Egg cartons.
Diapers.
Rayon.
Film, plastics, rubber.
Inks, adhesives, lubricants.
Bubblegum, ice cream.
Cardboard.
Milk containers.
Pharmaceutical products.
Coffee filters, cosmetics, aspirin.
It's amazing the things you can get out of a tree.
Finding new ways to use trees was always a priority. The goal? To use each and every part of each and every tree. That effort led to a new phase in the company's history. In 1931, Weyerhaeuser Timber Company opened a pulp mill in Longview, Washington. The mill was designed to use hemlock, a species once considered of little value. The trees were processed into pulp and in turn paper and boxes. The mill was a success, turning a surprising profit during the Great Depression. The drive for full utilization led to more innovation. Wood was converted into ceiling tiles, plywood, insulation, and Presto logs. In 1933, when Phil Weyerhaeuser assumed leadership of the company, his grandfather would barely have recognized it. Timberland remained at its heart, but innovation and expansion had met the needs of a changing world. In 1937, he decided the time was right to test sustainable forestry. Braving industry skepticism, he announced, "We will hereby be launching on a program of growing trees." In support of this initiative, a new ad campaign boldly stated, "Timber is a crop." In 1941, Weyerhaeuser Timber Company dedicated the nation's first certified tree farm, the Clemens Tree Farm. It was the start of a nationwide movement dedicated to replanting and regrowing timber. It was sustainable forestry in action. It guaranteed Frederick Weyerhaeuser's original insight that there always will be forests covering the land for our children and for our grandchildren.
The Weyerhaeuser nurseries form the cornerstone of our regeneration programs. We provide genetically superior trees to our foresters for replanting our sites.
The forest cycle is an awful lot about sustainable forestry. It involves planting, harvesting, planting again, and all of our research indicates we can continue to do this one generation after another.
Sustainable forestry, to me, involves not just sustaining the tree so that we'll have products for the future, but it includes sustaining the entire biological habitat.
I'm standing on a log that was left in the harvest unit to provide habitat for wildlife. It tends to attract insects and small mammals that'll congregate around the log as it decomposes, and then those in turn provide a food source for some of the larger birds, eagles, owls, etc.
It's very possible that we can manage our forests for economic values and at the same time have wonderfully healthy streams, rivers, and wildlife populations. It's not an easy thing to do. It requires a lot of thought. It requires a lot of work on the part of our entire organization acting as one.
This is the Flint River Pulp Mill in Oglethorpe, Georgia. We have long used a strategy of minimum impact manufacturing so as that we can address the environmental impacts of a project during the installation and design of that project rather than waiting to the end.
Part of the byproduct of making pulp is the bark. We don't use it for making paper, so we burn it here in a boiler, create steam. Through the use of steam, we have a turbine generator, so we create some of our electricity.
You know, Weyerhaeuser was the first forest products company to start tree farming, so it only makes sense that our evolution into product stewardship would now include things like paper recycling. We have some customers where we actually close the loop. We collect newsprint for recycling. We sell it to paper mills that make new newsprint. We collect the newspaper again for recycling, and the loop just continues to go around.
In the boom years after World War II, consumers were hungry for new products. The company responded with additions of kraft pulp and bleached paperboard mills, plywood and veneer plants, particle board, container board, hardboard, and wood fiber mills, and even a bark processing plant. At the same time, sustainable forestry was in full swing on company lands, which now included acreage in the South. A new type of specialist joined the Weyerhaeuser ranks, the research forester. Science was now guiding the business of timber growing. Technology and innovation became watchwords, all driven by a simple commitment to turn every bit of a harvested tree into products people need.
The Technology Center at Weyerhaeuser is a very important part of our business. In this building, we're doing lots of research to make sure that we can deliver value to our customers with the ever so precious natural resource to which we've been entrusted. This is where we set the path for the future to make sure we meet the obligations society has placed on us. We're doing lots of work in how do we reconstitute wood into products with precisely the strength properties that the customer demands for a given application.
By the end of the 1950s, Weyerhaeuser Timber Company was making far more than timber. To reflect this growth, company president F.K. Weyerhaeuser announced a new name, Weyerhaeuser Company, with a new logo signaling the change. The 60s and 70s brought international expansion into Asia and Europe. Under the leadership of George Weyerhaeuser, the company greatly expanded its timberland holdings with the acquisition of 1.8 million acres in the southern United States, double the purchase that started the company. With expanded ownership came added stewardship responsibility. The timberland had to be managed as productively as possible. For 30 years, Weyerhaeuser foresters focused on that very goal. Finally, in 1966, George Weyerhaeuser announced high-yield forestry. With high-yield forestry, strong, productive trees grow more quickly. Intense cultivation efforts brought a steady supply of timber, fueling company confidence and expansion. In May 1980, high-yield forestry met the ultimate test. It came at Mount St. Helens. The mountain exploded with the force of several atomic bombs, vaporizing, flattening, or scorching 200 square miles of forest. Volcanic ash rose 63,000 feet into the sky. The top of the mountain was pulverized. Buried in the choking ash and mud were 68,000 acres of Weyerhaeuser's St. Helens tree farm. George Weyerhaeuser and company leaders considered the best course of action. Almost immediately, they decided to salvage as much wood as possible and begin the immense task of regenerating the devastated timberlands.
Salvage operation here in the blast zone was like nothing that we had ever seen. About 1,000 workers up here at one time. And then the very first winter of 1981, we started the regeneration project. Digging through the ash was our biggest obstacle. We had to get the roots down into the soil underneath, and that took an incredible amount of work. When we finished, we had 45,500 acres covered with a little over 18 million seedlings, and they were all planted one by hand. The results are here. You can see them. The trees are doing very well, and our expertise has paid off.
Since the eruption, Weyerhaeuser has continued to build on its heritage. In the 1990s, CEO Jack Creighton led the formulation of a new vision and value statement and focused on core businesses. In 1997, Steve Rogel became CEO with the task of leading the company into its next 100 years.
Tradition comes to mind when I talk about our history. We're a well-known company for all of the things that we do, not just the products that we make, but I think the good works that this company has done in the communities where it has existed in the past. Those are values that continue to the present and we want to perpetuate into the future. But I think at our 100th birthday, we're on the cusp of major change. The technological revolution in this world has not left us untouched. It's sped up the decision-making process. We're global in the way we're reaching out to do our business. All companies are. So I think the next 100 years have a lot of challenge for us. And as the first outside CEO of this company, I have a special challenge in helping getting us ready for the next 100.
I planted these trees nearly 30 years ago when I first came here with Weyerhaeuser Company, and over the years I've helped nurture this stand to what you see today, and I'm really proud of what we have here. And I'm confident that the next generation of foresters will continue the cycle when we harvest in the year 2007, 2008. I may well be retired by then, but that next generation I know will do the job.